Hello there. Thank you so much for joining us. This is News Channel Nebraska. My name's Eric McKay. Let's take a look at our top headlines today. Police say the efforts of a homeowner and a canine unit played pivotal roles in stopping car thefts in Kearney. Police say they first received word of suspicious activity at the Walmart in Kearney around noon Tuesday. An hour later, a nearby homeowner reported a man in their house trying to steal a car. Police say the homeowner chased the man out of the house, then pulled him out of a neighbor's vehicle to prevent the man from stealing it. Officers used a canine unit to track and arrest 36-year-old Justin Cocaries, who police say is homeless but has ties to the Gibbon area. He's currently in jail, facing 4 criminal charges. At the state capitol, nearly a month after being summoned back to Lincoln to address soaring property taxes, the Nebraska legislature adjourned without passing significant relief. Lawmakers did pass a slate of bills, but they do little more than slow the increase of property taxes. An 11th hour push by a handful of lawmakers to come back later in the year with a new measure was voted down before the body adjourned the special session. That measure would have allowed voters to decide whether to lower the property tax rate for homeowners. What passed instead was a Maine bill to cap the tax levies of city and other local governments and front-load an existing property tax credit so everyone eligible automatically receives it. 2 companion bills make a series of budget cuts to pay the nearly $140 million cost. Governor Jim Pillen called the special session last month after the legislature failed in the regular session to pass his proposed plan to cut property taxes by an average of 40%. He said while the bills passed Tuesday weren't what he initially envisioned, they will mean tax relief for Nebraskans.
Because everyone here knows we have an extraordinary crisis. We have a property tax crisis, and all of us are working hard for the Nebraskans who don't have lobbyists, who don't have special interests standing up and talking for them.
What did finally pass and was signed into law yesterday by the governor will come to less than 5% of the property tax relief he'd proposed. Pillen had repeatedly promised to keep calling lawmakers back into session through Christmas if they failed to pass significant property tax relief, but when asked about that Tuesday, the governor said he does not plan to call lawmakers back again this year. Night 2 of the Democratic National Convention themed a bold vision for America's future. The evening capped off by former President Barack Obama's keynote address. Our national correspondent Michael Yoshida has the highlights from last night and a preview of what to expect on Night 3.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling fired up.
The hometown star bringing the United Center to a frenzy. Former President Barack Obama delivering a forceful affirmation that Kamala Harris is the right leader for the moment, as Democrats look to defeat former President Donald Trump.
We need a president who will stand up for their right to bargain for better wages and working conditions. And Kamala will be that president.
And former First Lady Michelle Obama went for a more direct confrontation with the Republican nominee.
See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of 2 hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. Wait, I want to know, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here tonight to officially nominate Kamala Harris, DNC. Turn out for what?
A star-studded night that even featured a handful of Republicans throwing their support behind the Democratic candidate. Stephanie Grisham, the former press secretary of former President Trump, pulling back the curtain on her old boss.
Now here I am, behind a podium, advocating for a Democrat. And that's because I love my country more than my party.
In Chicago, I'm Michael Yoshida reporting.
While the Democratic National Convention takes place in Chicago, large rallies have been taking place as well related to the war in Gaza. Now, most of the demonstrations have been peaceful, but there have been a few security issues. And as Amy Kiley reports, more protests are scheduled for Tuesday afternoon and evening.
After a brief scuffle between police and a few protesters in Chicago last night, more demonstrations are set to take place in the city today. That's as the Democratic National Convention unfolds there. Some of the protesters are speaking out against civilian deaths in Gaza. Others are showing support for Israel.
We do expect to see more protests, more demonstrative tactics. Again, we're up to the challenge.
Video shows police in riot gear getting involved during a pro-Palestine rally outside the Israeli consulate yesterday. It also shows the vast majority of protesters heeding law enforcement and remaining nonviolent. Meanwhile, new fencing is now in place, where a handful of demonstrators broke through Monday.
There were demonstrative tactics applied to remove some of the locks from the outer perimeter fence.
That same night, witnesses say protesters inside the United Center unfurled a pro-Palestine banner during President Joe Biden's speech. The various calls for peace in Gaza seem to have his attention.
Those protesters out in the street, they have a point. A lot of innocent people are being killed on both sides.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
A federal judge in Texas has blocked the Federal Trade Commission's ban on non-compete clauses. The judge found the federal agency lacked authority to issue the rule, which would have voided contracts that ban workers from moving to rival employers. The FTC rule would have taken effect in September and invalidated employment contracts for an estimated 30 million workers. In a statement, the FTC said it was disappointed by the decision and is considering a potential appeal. The University of Nebraska-Lincoln closing its Office of Diversity and Inclusion. That's according to a letter sent to students by Chancellor Rodney Bennett. Bennett explained in the letter Tuesday that the university reimagining how the approach works, saying that the centralized approach to diversity and inclusion no longer suitable for UNL. As part of the change, the position for Vice Chancellor for Diversity and Inclusion has been eliminated. The office was established in 2018. It will now be replaced by an elevated Diversity Advisory Board, which now serves as the Chancellor's Advisory Board on Community and Belonging. The decision is part of a broader budgetary strategy announced last November, which includes $12 million in proposed cuts due to a projected $58 million shortfall in the NU system over the next 2 years. The state of Nebraska getting federal aid to support recovery efforts from the severe weather that hit the state this past spring. President Joe Biden has approved a federal disaster declaration for Nebraska covering storm damage from May 20th to June 3rd. FEMA has now made relief funds available to 17 counties. It was just weeks after that Arbor Day tornado outbreak that another severe storm hit, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, and in the case of western Iowa, deadly tornadoes. Nearly 10 inches of rain fell in the Omaha metro area within 48 hours, which caused widespread damage and displaced families across eastern Nebraska. Now, this past July, traffic crashes claimed the lives of 25 people on Nebraska roads. That's according to the Department of Transportation. They tell us the fatalities resulted from 23 separate fatal accidents. Of the 16 occupants who died, 6 were not wearing their seatbelts. The seatbelt status of most of those was unknown. 19 of the fatalities happened in rural areas, 1 on the interstate, 19 on other highways, and 5 on local roads. Among those who died were 2 pedestrians, 6 motorcyclists, and an individual on an electric motor scooter. Meanwhile, Americans getting ready to hit the road for the upcoming holiday in a big way. AAA says domestic travel bookings for Labor Day weekend 9% higher this year than last. Analysts say Seattle is this year's top Labor Day weekend destination. Other popular places on AAA's list, New York, Boston, and Denver. As for people heading out of town by car, gas prices about 30 cents less expensive compared to this time last year. A new warning from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The agency says it's keeping an eye on a rising number of human parvovirus cases in the U.S. It's usually a mild infection, but people who are pregnant or have certain health issues can face severe complications. Mandy Gaither has more on what you need to know about this viral illness.
It's called Parvovirus B19. Early this year, health officials in more than a dozen European countries reported unusually high numbers of cases there, and now the U.S. is seeing more of the viral illness, too.
This year so far, the increase in cases has been up to 20%.
The CDC says some who are infected with the virus will have no symptoms. Others may have a fever, headache, cough, sore throat, rashes, and joint pain. It can also present itself as red splotches on the face, also called a slap cheek rash, but this symptom is more common in children.
It attacks bone marrow cells, primarily red blood cells, or the precursors to red blood cells. So it tends to cause anemia.
OBGYN Dr. Gregory John Locksmith with Orlando Health says pregnant people, especially those with no previous exposure to the virus, have a higher risk of serious complications.
1 out of 3 cases, the mother does transmit the virus to the baby. Most of those babies don't have problems, but a small percentage, maybe 10 to 20%, can develop severe anemia, which can ultimately lead to intrauterine fetal death.
There's no vaccine to prevent a parvovirus B19 infection, but since it can spread through respiratory particles, practicing good hygiene can help prevent the spread. Cover nose and mouth with a tissue or your elbow when you cough and sneeze. Properly wash hands and clean frequently touched surfaces. For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
And finally, city officials say progress is coming along so well on the reconstruction of Lincoln Street in Beatrice. More access points to the new pre-kindergarten to 5th grade school could be open in just days. That part of Lincoln Street could be reopened by Labor Day, which would add 3 entrances and exits on the north side of the school. For parents bringing their kids to school and picking them up at the end of the day. There's still work to be done, though. A roundabout to be built at 33rd and Lincoln, resurfacing to be done on 33rd, and repaving a smaller part of Lincoln Street west of the new school. And you can stay up to date with the very latest by following us online. Head to newschannelnebraska.com. Click on the News tab there. You can also follow us on X, like us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. You're watching News Channel Nebraska.